This is CBC Here and Now.
I believed her. I thought I had a right baby.
I'm in Triton, where a woman has learned that the child she brought home from hospital and lovingly raised is not the child she gave birth to more than 50 years ago.
They both had blue eyes. They both had a little tiny bit of light blonde hair.
25 years of Hibernia production. It's the oil project that keeps on going and keeps on giving. And tonight, it's being celebrated. We'll have more on that coming up.
A company car, more than 100 days of paid leave. NowCore employees enjoyed some pretty impressive perks. I'm Joel Roberts, and I'll tell you what the Auditor General had to say about that just ahead on Here and Now.
Good evening and welcome to Here and Now. We begin tonight in Triton, where a mother and her family are calling for an apology and compensation for children switched at birth more than 50 years ago. The health minister is showing sympathy about what happened, but as Here and Now's Mark Quinn reports, he stopped short of giving them what they say they need.
When the nurse brought the baby in and I said, I don't think that's my baby. And she said, oh, yes, yes.
Ruth Lush feared she was being given the wrong baby before she left the Springdale Cottage Hospital in 1969, but nurses reassured her she was wrong.
Guaranteed this your baby, I assure you. And people there talking about how much babies change overnight. And I believed her. I thought I had a right baby. And because I looked at the baby, they both had blue eyes. They both had a little tiny bit of light blonde hair.
But earlier this year, a DNA test for a woman living across the country proved Lush was right. She was given the wrong baby. Lush says she cried for days after getting the news.
I didn't raise my own child. And that is still what, is very difficult to come to terms with. I had a child. I did not know her until she was 53 years old. Can you imagine not knowing your own baby? That was stolen from me.
The DNA test that changed everything was done by this woman, Caroline Weir Green. She's been living in Yellowknife for more than 3 decades. The Ancestry DNA test was a Christmas gift from her husband last year.
Well, I was raised by my aunt, and I thought my real father. But I always had questions about that.
Still, she wasn't ready for what she found. New biological parents, new biological sisters. This should have been her home in Triton.
It took a while for me to be able to totally understand the impact that this has actually had on my life. It is big. I mean, it's life-changing. I lived somebody else's life. I've lived the lie.
She says going to Triton to meet her biological mother this past summer was a powerful, good experience, but she's still struggling.
Every day, this has consumed me. Every day, every minute. Not every day, every night too. My sleep is interrupted. Everything.
I lived somebody else's life. I lived 53 years. It was not my life.
You and Tina, see, sometimes you got along.
Sometimes we did.
Yeah.
Not very often, but we did.
Arlene Lush was raised in Triton because of the switch. She says that growing up she was clearly different from her siblings, but she never guessed that she was switched.
I fell to the floor, dropped. I thought that was, the world was done. I don't have nobody now. Is what I thought.
Now, Lush says she wishes she didn't know.
I wish that it would never come to light. Or if it happened, I wish I was dead when it happened. You can't change it, and you can't stop thinking about it. People say, oh, you'll get over it, it'll be okay. It'll never be okay.
The women who were switched and Ruth Lush say they're owed an apology and compensation for their suffering.
I want an apology. And I'm not going to stop until I get an apology.
They and a pair of men who were switched at the Come By Chance Cottage Hospital in the 60s are being represented by a St. John's lawyer. This October, it came up at the House of Assembly.
This situation happened a number of decades ago, Mr. Speaker. We do share the sympathy with the families that have gone through this. It is obviously difficult on those families. This type of thing should never have happened. It did. We can't change that.
CBC asked for an interview with Health Minister Tom Osborne. We were told that he can't speak about a matter that's in court. Mark Quinn, CBC News, Triton.
Well, now to some COVID news. 3 more people in the province have died due to COVID-19. That's according to today's update. One of the people was in their 70s, while 2 others were 80 years of age or older. The latest update indicates hospitalizations are slightly down from last week. 13 people are currently in hospital due to the virus. 3 are in critical care. Well, the province announced the details today of the Health Sciences Centre Emergency Services redesign. By adding additional space and upgrading the existing footprint, the Liberals hope to improve services at the province's largest hospital. But the budget has quadrupled since it was first announced. Jeremy Eaton explains.
It looks sleek. It'll be larger, growing to 56 beds from the current 40, and it'll help streamline services.
This new emergency department will serve patients at both the Health Sciences Centre and the new Adult Mental Health and Addictions Hospital.
The upgrades will see a new ambulance garage indoors rather than unloading patients outside. There are 2 phases. The first to build an extension, slated to be completed by 2025, and the second, renovate and upgrade what's already there.
I'm very pleased today to announce that a contract valued at $40 million has been awarded to Marco Group to improve and expand the emergency department at the Health Sciences Centre here in St. John's.
However, when first announced back in April, the price tag was only $10 million. When the tender closed in August, it had jumped to $40 million, quadrupling in price.
You know, this is something that is to be expected, that the costs, the projections on a project, what we anticipated the cost would be 2 years ago or even 18 months ago, those costs have gone up on all projects.
This is an embarrassment. It's an insult to the people of Newfoundland and Labrador, and it's an insult to all those healthcare workers who diligently every day do what they can to keep us safe and healthy in Newfoundland and Labrador. This will only delay access in the emergency rooms.
An expansion will mean a need for more healthcare staff, which has been an issue for the Liberals lately.
If you're going to spend all this money, wouldn't your first priority be to recruit extra nurses, doctors, health professionals, open up some other clinics that are more accessible outside of the hospital reign? Do other things in other areas in Newfoundland and Labrador. Find a way to keep all these emergency rooms open in remote and rural Newfoundland and Labrador.
Who are we going to get to man this? How are we going to deal with what we've been calling for a comprehensive human resources plan to deal with the shortage?
We are doing everything possible to recruit healthcare professionals in a very competitive global market. I'm confident that we will see success from those recruitment drives.
To achieve this means demolishing the current emergency entrance and forcing folks heading to the ER to go through the main door.
There will be inconveniences, no doubt, but I think we need to keep our eye on the main objective here, and that is improving a healthcare facility that's badly needed.
The province hopes the work will begin as quickly as possible. Jeremy Eaton, CBC News, St. John's.
Fairly quiet day out there across the province, seeing a few flurries here and there, but overall not a whole lot to talk about. But the main weather will move in as we head through the overnight tonight. That's thanks to an area of low pressure already bringing some snow to parts of the Maritimes, as well as some rain, and that's exactly what we are going to see across the province as we head through the night tonight. So some of those flurries on the doorstep of the southwest coast at the moment, and we'll continue to track further north and east as we head through the overnight tonight, bringing some snow. So Environment Canada does have a couple of weather statements out, as well as a wreck house wind warning. Well, we'll see those gusts upwards of about 100 kilometers per hour through the night tonight and into the first half of tomorrow. And then snowfall warnings from southeastern Labrador through to the northern peninsula and Green Bay, White Bay, where we'll see quite a bit of snow. In fact, upwards of 20 plus centimeters. I'll get into the full details coming up.
Multiple emergency vehicles responded to Bannerman Park in St. John's earlier today. A fire broke out in the area of the canteen and public washrooms just before 10:30 this morning. You can see crews cutting into the overhang above the structure. The city says it's too soon to speculate on the extent of the damage and no word on how the fire started. Well, for friends and loved ones, it was an emotional, somber ceremony. This is a global day of remembrance for road traffic victims. At the Confederation Building in St. John's, people gathered to honor first responders, those recovering from injuries as a result of a road accident, and to remember the many lives lost.
Many years have passed since those summer days among the fields of barley.
It is still raw, and it always will be. You know, until you experience it, a sudden death, you really have no understanding.
I think of the word robbed, because it robbed his students of a beloved teacher. It robbed his siblings, my brother Paul and I, of a brother. It robbed our sister-in-law, Marcia, of a husband. Robbed our nephews, Sam and Kip, of a father. His death left a hole in our lives. Not a day goes by that we do not think of him. Think of him every time I go past the Ghost Bike on the Outer Ring Road. Think of him every time I go out in the woods. Think of him every time at a family gathering and he's not there.
Shannon Edgar Pittman. Shanny. He was my husband. He was amazing. He had a smile that lit up a room and my heart. He was only 40 years old. When the elderly die, we say goodbye to their past. When a young person like Shannon dies and is killed unexpectedly, we had to say goodbye to the future we had anticipated, which was ripped away in such a cruel manner. Wake up, obey the rules, put the phones away, instill rules into children on proper control of vehicles, know your limits, and ask yourself if you are truly driving as safely as you should and could be.
Hefty incentives, soaring salaries, plus perks. Some NowCore employees were paid much more than their counterparts in other areas of government. That's according to a report from the Auditor General. Here now's Daryl Roberts reports.
Today, Newfoundland and Labrador's Auditor General released the second part of her audit of the Crown Corporation responsible for Muskrat Falls. It shows that even as the provincial debt skyrocketed, salaries went up and some employees received significant bonuses.
My audit concluded that NowCore Energy's management and executive employees' total overall compensation was and continues to be higher than the total compensation of comparable provincial government positions. Specifically, we found that NowCore paid significantly higher total compensation as compared to the provincial government for all of the 35 management and executive positions that we examined.
Executives and management enjoyed lucrative benefits, including 100% employer-paid health and life insurance premiums, more than 100 employer-paid leave days, up to 26 weeks of salary after retirement, and a nearly $13,000 annual car allowance for executives. In some cases, management and executives were paid tens of thousands more than equivalent employees in other government positions. At least one executive's salary was more than double. A 2010 order in council exempted NowCore, now folded into NL Hydro, from government compensation policies.
But we would expect them to use that exemption prudently when there was an obvious business need. We couldn't determine any business need for why comparable positions in the same market would need to be compensated so differently.
The AG wants Hydro to reevaluate compensation practices to ensure the best possible use of public funds.
In her response to the report, NL Hydro CEO Jennifer Williams didn't say if a review will happen, but said the organization has made changes like reducing executive positions, eliminating vehicle bonuses, and stopping salary scale changes. The province's energy minister says he wasn't surprised by the report, though he says the previous administration is partially to blame.
They were let to do what they want. They were unchecked, and that's what led to the situations we have, including Muskrat Falls, which this project and that corporation.
The leader of the official opposition says it's up to the provincial government to ensure there's accountability.
And I know some of these goes back for a number of years, but for the last 4 or 5 years there's been debate and discussion in the House of Assembly about accountability by all Crown agencies and organisations, but particularly NowCore. And now we find out in the last number of years again, not only has there been no accountability and no responsibility, but it's actually gotten worse.
Meanwhile, Muskrat Falls is billions over budget and years behind schedule. And with ongoing software issues, there's no firm end in sight. Daryl Roberts, CBC News, St. John's.
A significant milestone in this province's history is being celebrated in St. John's tonight. 25 years ago tomorrow, first oil was produced at the Hibernia platform, way offshore in the Grand Banks. It was the start of a new industry that has helped transform the province's economy following the disastrous collapse of the cod fishery. So let's take a look back at some of the major moments of the last quarter century.
Hibernia means dignity. Dignity for all Newfoundlanders.
In the 90s, Brian Mulroney's government took a stake in the Hibernia oil project when it was close to collapse.
At the time, these were controversial and unprecedented commitments from a federal government.
Everybody said, no, this is a waste of time and money and it'll never happen.
Mulroney's government went all in on Hibernia.
When the going was good, oil was flowing offshore, and expensive wine was flowing in dining rooms around St. John's.
The Sikorsky S-92A helicopter plunged into the North Atlantic, 55 kilometers southeast of St. John's. 17 people were killed.
The largest oil platform off the coast of Newfoundland remains shut down tonight.
How did the oil get out in the first place? Well, that's under investigation.
Oil spills like this is 3 in the last 12 months, this cannot be tolerated.
Never thought we'd be here 20 years later and working with the same people in a lot of cases, and then having younger students and things come in, it's been awesome.
If you look at all the accomplishments that we've made and tally them up, I don't think you'll find any greater accomplishment.
The industry is teetering because of the global pandemic.
I've seen more layoffs in the last 6 months than I have seen in 10 years.
Let's get Hibernia back into the drilling phase. Is that what you want?
Yeah. Millions in public money is being pledged to this province's battered oil industry. This time around, Hibernia, the project that started it all, is getting a boost.
Well, about 500 people are set to gather at the St. John's Convention Centre at this hour for an anniversary dinner to mark Hibernia's first quarter century. And here now's Terry Roberts is also there joining us live. So Terry, this really is a celebration of Hibernia's contribution to the province.
Sure is, Carolyn. Actually, the numbers I'm told now are closer to 600 people here tonight at the convention center. Now look, whether you oppose or you support the oil industry, there's no denying what Hibernia has done and the broader oil industry in general for this province. I mean, I'll just throw out some of those numbers that I've, some of the facts we've got here. 1,000 people, well over 1,000 people right now work with the Hibernia project directly. 1,000 jobs. And if you think about it, they first produced oil here 25 years ago tomorrow. And since that time, there's now been 1.2 billion barrels of oil come out of Hibernia. And also, in terms of the financial reward for this province, $19 billion in revenue has now come back to the provincial and federal government from Hibernia alone. Most of that coming to the provincial government. And get this, we all know about the big profits right now being made by the oil companies. Well, some of that money is coming back to the province as well. I'm told that $1 billion in the last 9 months alone has come from Hibernia to the provincial and federal governments. So as you can see, there's a celebratory mood here tonight. And one of the people who's in quite the celebratory mood is an oil executive who's agreed to go live on TV with us tonight, Steve Edwards, president of the Hibernia Management Development Company. You run Hibernia right now. Put it in perspective for us. What's it like to be here tonight marking 25 years of production?
It's absolutely spectacular. It's just a wonderful night this evening, Terry. You know, we've thought a lot about, over the last couple of weeks, about what this means for everybody. And I think about, you know, three things. About the legacy of Hibernia. You know, Hibernia was a launching pad of an industry in Newfoundland and Labrador, and launched the cornerstone of what became many other mega projects. You know, the second I think about is about the economic impacts that Hibernia has had. You know, $19 billion since 1997 when we first started. And the second is, the last thing is just about the people. You know, we talk about the people tonight, the impact that they've had right from the beginning of Hibernia when it was a project, right through to today, continuously evolving, continuously applying to new technology. And we're hopeful that we're going to be here for another 20 plus years.
Well, that's the big 20 plus years, because we were told from the beginning that this would be an 18 to 20 year project, that there's a 500 million barrels of oil out there. But right now you're at 1.2 billion barrels. And so where do you go? How did that happen? How did you go from 500 million to 1.2 and now many more years of production? What happened there?
Well, like you said, Terry, we did think when it started that it was 20 years or so. And that it was about 500 million barrels of oil, and today at 1.2 billion barrels, just a spectacular success story for Newfoundland and Labrador. I mean, it really comes down to, again, to the people. You know, finding innovative solutions, advances in applying, you know, extended reach technology and drilling, reservoir modeling. Digital technologies, those are the things that have unlocked, you know, this new thing for us. So,
well, the conversation around oil has changed a lot in recent years, of course, because of climate change, because of the shift away from fossil fuels. So, as an oil executive, how do you balance, you know, the reality of the product you produce with the legacy of oil and gas?
Yeah, climate change is a very important topic, and it's a challenge for all of us. We all have a part in climate change, and we recognize that balance. You know, the world needs energy, and we're entirely committed to reducing our emissions on Hibernia. In fact, we've been able to reduce emissions by more than 25% since 2005. That's something we work hard every single day, and we'll continue to work hard for many years to come.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
That's Steve Edwards. He's the president of Hibernia Management, a Memorial University grad. Born and bred this province, part of the legacy, I guess you could say, of the oil and gas industry in this province. Back to you in the studio.
So the t-shirt version here of our problem for the province that we need to think about carefully is oil equals climate crisis.
As the province celebrates the 25th anniversary of the Hibernia project, we'll talk about the future of oil with an environmental policy expert. That's a little later on Here and Now.
One former St. John's caregiver says the mental burden of giving care can become too much, especially if little support is provided. The second part of the CBC series concerning care, just ahead.
the mental toll caregiving can have on a person. That's the focus of the latest in the CBC series concerning care. Our look at the provincial respite and home care. Here now's Henrika Wilhelm spoke to former caregiver Ari Rochester. Now, they were caring for their mother who has Alzheimer's disease, but had to step away because of the stress.
I don't want to have any regrets. I want to interact with them with a spirit of loving kindness.
One of the reasons Ari Rochester of St. John's agreed to be caregiver for their mother Elizabeth, who has Alzheimer's disease. About 2 years later, in 2018, Rochester first felt overwhelmed. Then, when the COVID pandemic hit, Rochester was on their own for 7 months.
Eventually, one of the care workers came back, and thank goodness, because I was getting pretty done. And then we were accessing more and more care. When things really started to go downhill in terms of being able to access care workers were when we needed many more hours, because I would say it was before the pandemic hit that we could no longer leave her alone. And that really changes things.
In May 2021, Rochester applied for long-term care. While the family waited for a spot, the application was held up for 4 months due to a supposedly missing X-ray, which had been done the entire time. In the meantime, Elizabeth deteriorated.
People with dementia lose inhibitions, things that they would not have done formerly, they do. And they don't understand why a lot of things need to happen. And so there was a lot of difficulty, especially around personal care.
Alzheimer's disease is a form of dementia. It kills brain cells, which affects people's thinking, memory, and speech, but also their personality and moods. About 60 to 80% of all dementia cases are Alzheimer's. All this affected Rochester's own mental health. They started going to private therapy, since all that was suggested to them was short-term care, such as doorways.
I needed some consistency and predictability, because there is no consistency and predictability in your day-to-day life when you're caring for someone with dementia.
But Rochester's mental health continued to go downhill, so much so that their doctor took them off their mother's care.
When I say I wanted to care for my mother with loving kindness, there got to be a point where I was so exhausted and distressed that being able to feel loving kindness was not accessible.
Just 4 days later, an ambulance had to be called to take Elizabeth to the emergency room. Luckily, a long-term care bed was available. Now, Rochester wants to see more long-term mental health care options and regular checkups for caregivers. According to the Alzheimer's Society, about 20% of Canadians have experience caring for someone with dementia, and 2/3 of them say the task is isolating.
There needs to be a more holistic approach. We know that if you're caring for someone in the home with dementia, that the family is going to struggle. It's not a mystery. Talk to anybody. They know.
While their mother is happy in long-term care, Rochester says their scars from the experience will stay a while. Henrika Wilhelm, CBC News, St. John's.
It's a bit of a chilly start to the day today across the province. Temperatures below zero for the most part across the island. And then same thing up across Labrador. The coldest was in Mary's Harbour this morning at about -11. Now today temperatures rebounded for you in Mary's Harbour. Otherwise, not really too much movement in the temperatures. -5 today in Lab City, and then temperatures around 0 degrees in St. John's and -2 in Corner Brook. Now these temperatures are going to stay chilly as we head through the night tonight, as we see our next weather maker move in. A couple of Environment Canada warnings and watches, or statements rather, in effect. We do have snowfall warnings from southeastern Labrador through to the northern peninsula, as well as Green Bay, White Bay. Special weather statement for the interior, and then we have a wreck house wind warning. and we'll see those winds gusting fairly strong, about 100 kilometers per hour tonight and through tomorrow. So what we have going on right now is an area of low pressure bringing lots of wintry weather through parts of New Brunswick, and then we'll see some changeover to freezing rain and ice pellets. We're already starting to see some of that, but the rain and snow already on the doorstep of the southwestern Newfoundland as we head through the next couple of hours, and we'll continue to see that to head further north. So temperatures tonight are going to stay below zero. That's why this will start as snow right across the board. And then up across Labrador as well, temperatures well below zero. In fact, -12 for Happy Valley, Goose Bay, and -10 for Lab City through the overnight tonight. Now let's take a look at what's going to happen as far as precipitation goes and when that moves in. So over the next couple of hours, we will see that snow move in for the southwest. It could be heavy at times in some cases, and then that will continue to spread through to central and eastern areas of the island by the time we get into the early morning hours. Now, there will be a quick changeover to rain. We may see some ice pellets or freezing rain, but it'll happen fairly quickly, and then over to rain for the southwest 3-4 in the morning. Maybe a couple of centimeters for the Avalon, but we'll see that change over to rain very quickly by the time we get into about 6 or 7 o'clock in the morning. And then that snow will start for the northern peninsula. You can see in behind that, not heavy rain, likely some showers or some drizzle along the southwestern portions and then south coast. The heaviest rain should fall for eastern sections of Newfoundland through tomorrow morning. Now that will continue for the northern peninsula. The snow will. Otherwise, we should actually see some clearing skies in the afternoon, particularly for the eastern portion of the island, and some windy conditions as well. That will certainly continue through a good chunk of the day tomorrow, with that snow right through into Friday morning for the northern peninsula. So because of that, it does mean we'll see the most significant snowfall for you. Could see somewhere between 15 to 25 centimeters. Otherwise, a big swath of 10 to 15 through the interior parts of the west coast, and then between 5 to 10 as you head through central, and then much less after that, a trace, maybe 2 centimeters at the most for the Avalon. Now, as far as rainfall amounts go, we should see most of that rain fall for essentially Clarenville eastward. We'll likely see somewhere between 10 to 20 millimeters. Some pockets of 20 to 30 is certainly possible, but it is the winds really. We'll see those winds gusting tomorrow morning, somewhere between 80 to 100 kilometers per hour in exposed areas, otherwise between 40 to 60, and that will continue through a good chunk of the afternoon on Thursday and even continuing as we head into Friday. Temperatures tomorrow will be quite mild, between 10 to 12 degrees along the south coast and eastern Newfoundland, hence that change over to rain. Hovering between 1 and 4 for the northern peninsula, and then up across Labrador, you're looking at your temperatures well below zero for the west, and then hovering right around there for those of you along the coast. We'll see some cooler temperatures move in for other parts of the province. I'll get into the full long-range forecast coming up.
Well, as the province marks a quarter of a century of producing oil from Hibernia, there are tough questions about the future of the industry. We'll explore that after the break. Well, there's a big celebration happening today to mark the 25th anniversary of the Hibernia oil project. About 500 industry people have gathered together in St. John's for a gala event. Now, during the past 25 years, the conversation has certainly changed around oil and gas and raises questions about what the next 25 years will look like. So that's what we're going to talk about right now with Angela Carter, a political science professor who specializes in environmental policy. Thank you so much for being here.
It is great to be with you, Carolyn. Thanks for having me.
So this comes at a time, this big anniversary celebration comes at a time when there's a global movement away from fossil fuels. Do you think that there is room to both celebrate what oil and gas has done for the economy as well as acknowledge the damage it's done to the environment?
So yeah, absolutely. And in fact, I think that what we see in Hibernia is a testament to what we can do as a people here in Newfoundland and Labrador. In the early 1960s, the provincial government at the time started building up towards this industry, and for decades, for 30 years actually, before we got to first oil from Hibernia in 1997, there was all kinds of government money and support and infrastructure to develop this industry, and that involved local firms and the labor community. So it took a lot of effort to create Newfoundland and Labrador's ability to engage with a global oil sector. So now, as you say, conditions are different, and now we have climate risks and we have economic risks to the province, so both of those pieces are really important to consider. But what we know now is that we have the ability to make the transition based on our growth as an oil exporter here in the province.
And talking about transition, you know, it seems that the province is kind of banking on the expansion of the oil and gas industry with the approval of Bay du Nord. And the province seems to be also trying to position itself as kind of like the best option of all the bad options, you know, this idea of ethical oil and low carbon oil. What's your take on that?
So that's a triple question. So let's take it apart.
Okay.
So first of all, right off the top, there's no such thing as ethical oil. Oil is the lead cause of the climate crisis, along with gas and coal. So over the last decade, nearly 90% of all of the emissions that cause the climate crisis came from oil and gas and coal. That's the production of it and the use of it. So the t-shirt version here of our problem for the province that we need to think about carefully is oil equals climate crisis. So knowing that, there is scientific evidence, there is a consensus that if we're going to have some hope, any hope of staying within 1.5 degrees of warming, we have to, as a global community, stop expanding oil and gas production. No new exploration, no new fields. We have to stop the expansion and begin the wind down, gradual managed phase out of existing production. That is the scientific consensus that brings us to climate safety. Anything less than that means that we're throwing fuel on the fire of climate crisis. So you are right to point out that there is a contradiction between what our provincial government hopes to do, which is to double oil production by 2030, versus what the science tells us will give us, our kids, a chance for climate safety into the future.
And speaking of contradiction, you know, there's been a lot of attention being paid to climate change right now with COP27 happening. And the UN chief made headlines when he said this: the world is on a highway to climate hell with our foot still on the accelerator. So there seems to be a really big divide between that kind of dramatic messaging that we're getting from COP27 and the energy policies of the provincial and federal governments. Do you think that that's confusing for people?
Absolutely, it's confusing for people, and it's because it's not based in the facts and the evidence, these government positions that we have. And they also assume that Canadian oil, or Newfoundland and Labrador's oil, to loop back around to your earlier question, that they're somehow unique or clean or ethical. That is not the case. I mean, what would be ethical would be a just transition towards clean energy, renewable energy, so wind, solar, efficiency, and doing it in a way that would protect communities, make sure that workers have a chance to advance in this new energy economy, that our governments wouldn't be left on the hook with stranded assets. So that's infrastructure that we've invested in that's suddenly no longer valuable. I mean, there's nothing ethical about growing the oil sector at this point in time, and there's nothing special about our reserves offshore. In fact, if, again, looking at the facts, they're high-cost reserves, a lot more expensive to produce 350, 400 kilometers offshore than, say, for example, the big fields, the big reserves in Saudi Arabia. So, yes, we live in a democracy, but it doesn't mean that our oil is somehow better in terms of climate. What we know is that we all have to wind down. All countries need to do that.
Well, it's going to certainly be interesting to see what that future will bring. Angela Carter, thank you so much for this.
It's a pleasure to speak with you. Thanks for having me.
Whether it's Nan's photo album or the pictures your kids drew in kindergarten, we all have personal treasures we want to hold on to. But how do you keep them from getting moldy or faded or even falling apart? Well, tomorrow the Rooms is holding an event called Ask a Conservator, where you can get advice on how to care for just about anything in your personal collection. We asked for their top tips in advance, and here they are.
A conservator is somebody who's trained to extend the life of artifacts. So artifacts could be something in a museum, and it can also be things that you have in your own home.
My friends and family will occasionally ask me for advice, but sometimes I feel like I'm more pushing advice on them. I'll see they have something old and I'm like, you shouldn't be storing it like that.
I get a lot of phone calls asking me how to fix something and repair something, but more often I get questions about how to display their heirlooms or their family treasures, or how to store it so that they can keep it for their grandchildren down the road.
So my number one piece of advice is related to handling and display of your personal treasures and heirlooms. So when you're lifting something up, you'll want to pick from the base. For example, with this one, this handle has been repaired, and the glue or the adhesive might have become deteriorated over time, and this handle might be really weak, so if you go to pick it up, it could drop and then you'll have a disaster on your hands.
My number one piece of advice would be how to preserve photographs. For example, if you have a photograph that you really love, and maybe you have it framed on your wall at home, instead of framing the original, you should take it down, have it scanned, and print out a copy. Then you can put the original away and you know it's safe, and you can still enjoy your image. So another thing that a lot of people have are these, they're called magnetic photo albums. People commonly have a lot of questions about them because the photos do get stuck to the page. And then there's a question of, well, what do I do next? So what we really recommend is that if you have one of these albums, the very first thing you're going to want to do is scan each page of the album before you try and remove the photos. There's also some valuable information in knowing how the objects were displayed by the person who first had them, and maybe it tells a story or it progresses chronologically. So that's another layer of historical information that you can capture by scanning them in.
So it's not high tech and it's not fancy, but it's essentially a plastic tub. As a tip, this is my number one. Pick your most treasured memorabilia or drawings that your child drew for you. And every layer, every enclosure that you put them in is another layer of protection. So you have your drawing and you have your folder and you have it in the tub. So if there was a flood, it will stay dry.
You want to keep your treasures in as good condition as you can for as long as you can, so you can pass it down to family and they can all experience the same story that might be tied to it that you have as well.
Tomorrow on CBC Radio's Labrador Morning, the Union for Canada Post Workers provides an update on the staffing challenges in Labrador City affecting mail and deliveries. And on Newfoundland Morning, Grenfell students now have a 24/7 mental health support system in the form of a new app. You'll hear all about it tomorrow.
3, 2, 1. Boosters in ignition. And liftoff of Artemis 1. We rise together back to the moon and beyond.
NASA is celebrating a successful liftoff for Artemis 1. The test mission to the moon is finally underway after 2 scrubbed launches.
Yes, the uncrewed Orion spacecraft is on its journey now toward lunar orbit, the first step on the way to putting humans back on the moon's surface. That's pretty neat. Do you know why they call it Artemis? I read this today.
No.
Artemis was the Greek goddess of the moon.
That makes sense. I should have known that.
Yeah, and the Artemis mission is also one of the things they want to do is get the first woman on the moon.
There you go. Amazing.
Okay, back on Earth now, and the weather. How are things looking in the long range?
We're looking pretty winter-like over the next couple of days. I showed you yesterday that big dip in the jet stream, and that is going to bring some colder air. So let's take a look at what's going on as we head through Thursday night. That area of low pressure will mean that we're going to see a cold front move through, and in behind that, those winds will shift to more onshore again along the west coast, and that means the onshore flurries will continue for you and right through Friday. In fact, we could pick up some more snow, especially in the higher elevations into Friday afternoon. Otherwise, we should actually see some clearing skies. A few showers possible, but some clearing skies. The further east you go up across Labrador, staying unsettled as well with that chance of some light snow. Again, we'll likely see the snow in the morning and then stay cloudy through the afternoon, but you know, a couple more centimeters are certainly possible for you. Temperatures will be sitting below 0 for the most part, -1 in Happy Valley, Goose Bay, -6 in Lab City, and then along the coast somewhere between 1 and -3. Now, temperatures across the island be a tad warmer, but much cooler than Thursday. So between 3 to 5 degrees for the most part. Again, and that onshore flow going to keep those temperatures a little bit cooler, around 1 for Corner Brook, and then along the south coast again, somewhere between 2 and 4 degrees, again with that chance of a few showers, but also some sunshine. Now through Friday evening and right into Saturday, again, that onshore flow continues, and that means we'll see those onshore flurries continue along the west coast right through the day on Saturday. Otherwise, maybe a few showers in the mix for the east, and then again unsettled up across Labrador, but just the chance of a few flurries through the day. Temperatures will be again below 0 up across the Big Land, somewhere between -2 and -7, and then between 2 and 5 degrees for the island. A little cooler for the northern peninsula as your temperatures hover around 1 degree through the day, and really an unsettled long-range forecast as well. Temperatures will be fairly cool, a couple of degrees below where we should be sitting this time of year, but Saturday, Sunday, and Monday, all with the chance of either showers or flurries in the mix. Watching a potential for a system on Saturday. We could see some accumulating snow. I'm going to keep an eye on that one. It does look like it'll be one after another as far as the systems go. So things will be quite busy. But yeah, that's probably when we'll see our first snowfall that stays for, you know, more than a couple of hours anyway. For central Newfoundland, some flurries will move in Sunday night, continue through the day on Monday. Temperatures, again, a couple of degrees either near at 0 or just a couple of degrees above. And then for western Newfoundland, those onshore flurries will continue. May see a few peaks of sun on Saturday, but overall gray skies and flurries for you. Now for Labrador, at least the east, you're looking at a couple of nice days through the weekend as far as sunshine goes, but the flurries will return on Monday. And then gray skies and flurries, the story for Lab West, with temperatures well below 0, between 6 and 9 degrees below 0. I had to share this wonderful shot. This is some otters playing under the blue skies there in Labrador, Burn Arm, Labrador. In fact, Brendan shared that great shot with us.
Oh, that's so adorable.
I know. I loved it.
Yeah,
so I had to share it with all of you.
I love the animal and landscape shots.
It's wonderful, yes. If you have any weather photos that you would like to share with us, send them to my Facebook page, Twitter, or email them to nlphotos@cbc.ca.
Well, that's it for us tonight. Thank you so much for spending part of your evening with us, and hope you can join us again tomorrow.
Good night.